guest today is Dr. James Braxton Peterson, Director of Africana Studies and Associate Professor of English at Lehigh University. He holds his PhD in English. He joins us now live via Skype from Lehigh. Welcome, Dr. Peterson.
Good morning.
Arizona Governor Jan Brewer traded words with President Obama while greeting him at a Phoenix airport last week. The two spoke intently for a few minutes, and if a picture's worth 1,000 words, what does this one say, Doctor? What exactly happened? Was there a twist?
I think that the picture speaks a million words, and what it shows is the governor disrespecting the president of the United States. Now, whether or not that's exactly what happened, that's what people believe happened. And to be honest with you, I've been somewhat shocked by the amount of outrage that people are directing at this particular photo. People love this president, and people are not going to be able to really stomach this kind of disrespect.
So you're glad to see that people are really supporting him, I guess, in the case of what this picture might mean?
Well, I was just surprised by it. I mean, I felt sort of that the picture was in poor taste. And it's clear to me also that Governor Brewer has been changing her story about the interaction that she actually had with the president, upon which this photo is based. Remember, she had this meeting with him that she initially said went well.
Then
in her book, she said it didn't go so well. And then so they kind of have gone back and forth over what really happened. So the image is a reflection of that kind of, we don't know if she lied or if she told the truth. But I would just say people are really outraged about it. If you look at Twitter, if you look on Facebook, people are expressing their outrage at Governor Brewer disrespecting the president.
Yeah, so social media is definitely responding. Now, she's been known sometimes to have eccentric behavior, but interestingly, doesn't she have a book coming out around now too? So you can't help but wonder, did she try to generate some of her own?
Well, she did the rounds after the photo went viral. She was able to get out and get on Fox, get on different programs, and so clearly she's trying to leverage this for publicity. Also, like the president said, anytime a Republican gets into an argument with him, it's a photo op for them.
Doctor, let me ask you about the bigger picture here. This is something that maybe is only observed through the prism of an African-American perspective, but you look at the Joe Wilson comment, you look at the Tea Party protests initially against the president, now you look at the finger wagging, and do you sense a overwhelming disrespect of this president, unlike that has been delivered toward any other president?
Well, I think there's an overwhelming disrespect, and also there's an overwhelming sort of racial codedness to some of the discourse on the right. I mean, if you look at the N-word head ranch from Rick Perry, if you look at the comments by Michelle Bachmann about slavery, if you look at all the different sort of food stamp comments, the blah people recovery by Rick Santorum, there's been a lot of sort of racially coded language in public politics over the last year or so. So I think that's a little bit disheartening. Certainly when you look at this president, you think about the ways in which some Congress folk have reacted to him or responded to him, that also might be racialized. And again, I think we need to move beyond this, but let's also bear this in mind. Governor Brewer's policy in Arizona also has some sort of racial components to it too. It's from the perspective of our Hispanic brothers and sisters, it is a very, very radical policy to try to profile folk who are Latino or Hispanic or who just look like them in order to sort of try to get at some of the challenges that we have with immigration. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on.
Well, Arizona has had a history of that. If you remember, they were very reluctant to go along with the Martin Luther King holiday, and that was years ago. So something's going on in Arizona. Let's hope it's not a microcosm of what's happening across the country. Let me ask you this, though. This disrespect of the president from the racial perspective it totally flies in the face of the respect that President Obama gets abroad. I mean, we had a huge celebration internationally when he was elected.
Yes, and again, this president enjoys a tremendous amount of support at home and abroad. What's happening on the right is that there are people who feel that it's well within their sort of politically correct strategy to attack and divide us along issues of race. I think as a group, as a people, we got to push back against those things. We cannot allow anyone on the right or the left to divide America along racial lines.
So is there a takeaway here? You know, you mentioned before social media really, had a problem with the picture, but then, on the flip side, we, hear what the conservatives are doing. Can we learn something here maybe and make things better
I think
out of this?
yes, the takeaway is we need to elevate our public political discourse. Another takeaway is we don't disrespect the office of the President of the United States. Anyone who does do that, they should be shunned, just like Governor Brewer is being shunned on social media right now.
Doctor, it's a fascinating look. I just wonder, I guess we've jumped on this racial thing a lot because we talk about this in-house. I wonder if there's a schism between how non-African American or voters look at this issue.
Well, I think, and this is tricky. Most non-African American voters or voters who are not of color, as we say, most of them are basically, they're going to be offended by some of the really radical racial things that we've been hearing. But in general, people have sort of racial discourse fatigue. So there's a lot of folk who don't really want to talk too much about race anymore. My problem is that when you lay all these things out, when you lay out some of the disrespect directed at the president, when you collect all these different racial incidents, we didn't even mention the Ron Paul newsletters, when we put all these things together, then the context around race and racism seems to be pretty broad, and that's what I'm concerned about. I think we need to address that and sort of get that out of public politics and public discourse.
So is there a way to do that?
Well, there's multiple ways. One, we have to make people aware of it because some of it's dog whistles. So we need to make folk aware of it. And I've been writing about it on HuffPost. I've been appearing in other places and talking about it. We definitely need to be aware of it. We also need to be able to talk about it in ways that don't continue to polarize people along the lines of race. So while I want to talk about the things that people are saying about race, I don't want to be so angry about it that we can't have a conversation.
Well, yeah, you don't want it to be a divisive issue, but then you have people that just politically maybe have an issue with Obama, which would be, not a racial issue.
Sure, and we have to allow for that. It's fine to have political issues with President Obama. Some of my closest friends feel like President Obama is very centrist and then sometimes too conservative, especially on issues of immigration, especially on issues of tax reform and things of that nature. So there are folk on the left and folk on the right who criticize this president. That's why I consider we should be able to have a healthy discussion, a political debate that does not resort to sort of racialized, divisive politics.
You're absolutely right, Doctor. I mean, there are things that hardcore supporters of the president would like to have issues with, but the elephant in the room is the whole racial issue. You never hear that talked about on the major media, the CNNs, the Fox Newses, any of those networks, and I think that's a problem. Maybe you're right. To talk about it is a way to get beyond it.
It really is, and that's one thing people don't understand because they have all this racial discourse fatigue, is that the only way for us to continue to work through is to continue to talk about some of these tough issues.
Well, I'm glad that we're having this talk today, Dr. Peterson. We both, I should say, look forward to having you back. I think it's very important, the messages that you're touching on. And again, we thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great day. Now, let's bring back Matt Locker, switching topics here with a look at our weather here in the U.S.